footsteps of my King.
Okay, we have another podcast here with the new year coming out here shortly. Well, by the time you listen to this, it'll probably be a new year. Depending on where you're at, you'll have New Year's resolutions. You will maybe be succeeding, maybe you'll be failing. I know the gym business thrives the first probably a couple of weeks of January, and then reality kicks in, and we quit and give up because I'm not losing 30 pounds in 30 days, and I don't look like The Rock for men, or I don't even know who else for women. Beyonce. I don't know. Pardon me. I don't know who people look to. And again, I just did a podcast on body image, self-image, healthy self-image. So, make sure you check that out too. But I want to help some people with the new year here because, what diet is best? What fitness routine is best? What should I be doing? And there's so much confusion. So what I'm going to do is encourage you to go to westsidechristianfellowship.org and download some of my ebooks for free. They'll answer all the questions on fasting, fitness, cardiovascular training, resistance training, high intensity interval training. There's a lot of information there that I could no way cover right now. But to help you get going in the right direction, because I don't know when I'll have a health expo again where I can talk about some of this. So here's the deal. And this is just Idleman Unplugged. No notes. I'm just going off memory here. You need to find what works for you. Okay. The lifestyle that works for you. So you have, there's a lot of controversy out there now, especially with the Liver King guy. Don't watch it. Cusses a lot. I stumbled upon it and just saw, what he's trying to sell. Eat raw liver. Like we can all do that. Right. Or get grounded. And I mean, there's a lot of truth to some of that for sure. But my point is this, you hear that Liver King and primal eating, and then you hear carnivore only. That means meat only. Ooh, sounds good kind of, but and then you've got, a mixture of this, and then you got, paleo, or then you've got, vegan, and then you've got raw, which is tough. It's just raw food, not even cooked, because cooking can kill some of the enzymes and nutrients. And then you've got, whole foods, plant-based, and like this works. No, it doesn't, because there's too many carbohydrates. Oh, now we got to go carnivore and keep your body in a ketogenic state. Oh, okay. And then what about this? And so, man, if I'm getting confused and I know how the body works, I can only imagine what many people are experiencing. So I'm hoping this will help you. First, what you have to do is take it to prayer and say, Lord, help me in this area. I want to lose weight. I want to, get in shape to the best of my ability, because this body is what keeps my spirit here on earth. This body is how I minister to others. This body is how I will be a good parent or a poor parent, a good leader or a bad leader, a good spouse or a bad spouse. It's really, this body controls a lot of how productive I will be. Now, granted, there are some people in situations who, just cannot do anything because they're bedridden or they're sick. My prayers go out to them, and I'm not obviously talking about that. But for the majority of people, we can make changes. There are also people on the mission field. I mean, they're going to eat what's given to them. And of course, God will see them through. God sees your heart. And you have stories of, I just saw one, 98 years old. Her name was Ruth or something. What's the secret to your success, Ruth? Well, I smoke a cigar a day and have a little bit of whiskey. I'm like, oh man. Okay. Now everybody thinks they can do that. But there is something to genetics too. It's the study of genetics is epigenetics. And they're finding how gene expression can turn on certain switches and things. And that's why food plays a role. Microbiome plays a role. Fasting and autophagy plays a role in all of this. And some of these people, they're just, they have a cigarette or a little bit of alcohol, and they don't abuse these things, and the body can just keep itself clean. But for the majority of us, we have to, keep an eye on things. So here's what I would do is what you need to get started. I have to look through a biblical lens. A lot of these guys you'll follow and they'll say, well, 25,000 years ago when we had to, when we were hunter-gatherers and evolution, the evolutionary process, see, you're already building on a flawed foundation. You're already building your house on a foundation that will not stand. And so now what you're doing is you're making assumptions and decisions based on a foundation that is cracking and is not the truth. So, well, we've evolved, and we used to just eat meat, and then the industrial age, and now we started eating potatoes, and we need to get back to that meat like when we first evolved. And see, that's wrong. You're going to come away with a false premise. Also, these guys, if you look, I mean, they break down how the cell is made, mitochondria, and the enzymes, and the autophagy zone, and the cellular membrane, and look at all this, and look at how the microbiome, we've got billions of bacteria, and all this just happened. Give me a break, guys. Come on, we need to wake up. You sound so smart until you mention the word evolution. Okay, so with that said, God created us to eat. Are you ready for this? Okay. I don't know if you can handle this. God created us to eat whole plant food. Whole plant food. You can read in Genesis. I've given you all of the greenery, all of the herbs, all these fruits, all these vegetables to eat. And I don't really know. I've thought about this quite a bit. Obviously you miss some nutrients that are in meat, and so vegetarians, for example, have to supplement their diet. Actually, vegetarians aren't that. You shouldn't You shouldn't focus on being a vegetarian, because a vegetarian can eat Oreo cookies. You should focus on, and I'm going to get there in a minute. Well, let me tell you now. God-given whole food that gives life to the body. Does this carrot give me life? Yes, the enzymes, the beta-carotene, the phytochemicals. Man, this is going to be really good for my body versus a Snicker bar that will actually not do anything. Get you a sugar rush, toxic ingredients, partially hydrogenated oils. Partially hydrogenated is when they inject hydrogen gas into the fat molecule so that Snickers can stay on your closet shelf for 25 years. That's not good. It's dead food. So you don't give dead food to a living body. Now, be encouraged. I had a Snickers. I had a bite of one recently. So I got you. The struggle is real. But for the most part, we should shoot for whole foods that can give life to the body. So back to my question, if you've got, certain things that vegans are deficient in, so they have to take supplements. Could it be, I think, that obviously the plants were in the soil, and I think men and women back then touched a lot more soil. So you got some of the vitamins and minerals from the soil, the dirt on the plants. It's really good and healthy to actually work in the dirt, the microbiome from the dirt, very, very healthy. So we could have got a lot more things from the dirt, from the soil, because the plants, you pull up a carrot, you start eating, you got some dirt on there. So that's how we were created. You can argue all you want, but the Bible is crystal clear and I believe the protein ratio was fine, because here, we've got debates on that. 1.1 gram per kilogram of body weight, or per pound of body weight versus this, and some people are having way too much protein, but then you have high levels of uric acid, and then you can have some serious problems there. That's one of my one of my complaints with the carnivore diet would be that the high levels of protein are not going to be healthy long term. Sure, there might be a few short term benefits. And then fiber is so important. We could break down the microbiome, how it feeds on the fiber, how the fiber aids in digestion, how the fiber aids in serotonin levels, and fiber is just incredible. It's really like a cleaning system in the body. And so if you avoid all the fiber and just meat only, and is the meat very, very clean, no toxins in the meat at all. They weren't shot up with steroids, growth hormones. They weren't given antibiotics. They weren't eating food that was genetically modified and grain. And now that animal takes all that in, and now you're eating it. So, again, I'm not against animal. In a minute, let me unpack this. So, again, though, the foundation is we were created to eat whole, life-giving, God-given food. Okay, so that sweet potato, very good, very healthy. And here's what happens. Fast forward to now, probably 6,000 years after creation. We don't walk 15 miles a day. We're not very active. We're not hunting. We're not gathering. We're not building. Everyone was. And so now all the carbohydrates that were taken in at creation, even up to, gosh, 100 years ago. You burned them off. You've got the blood sugar levels and things, kind of balanced out because you were moving. And so now that we're so sedentary, now we have to be very careful with blood sugar levels. And that's what diabetes is. Diabetes is basically too much insulin, too much sugar, and then your body becomes insulin resistant. So your cells are not taking in any more insulin. So their answer is to pump in more insulin, which is actually not a good idea. The best idea is for the diabetic to reverse their diet, change their diet, and wean off medication slowly with doctor supervision and fasting, intermittent fasting especially, and you can really reverse diabetes. Diabetes is a health-related illness. It's directly related to what we're consuming, our lifestyle. So that's how you were created. You were created to eat life-giving, living, whole foods. That's it. So then about 1,500 years later, after the flood, Noah is released from the ark, goes out. And it's funny, most societies in China, most countries have records of a great flood. So, the Bible is truth for all men, for all time. Times change, truth does not. So after that, God said, now you have permission to eat animal products in addition to, obviously the vegetables and the plant life. So that's where I've been like, I wonder why that is. Now, obviously scarcity. Hello, the great flood, scarcity. Maybe it has to do with man's age. 120 years is, I believe, the maximum that God wants man to live. And so we know, I could just go over report after report after report on plant-based versus primarily, meat-based, how it affects the body, studies, what they found. And here's the thing with studies. You have to be very careful. Who published the study? Because I remember, all these studies about how great coffee is. Well, they're published by Folgers or Nestle or Pepsi or, sugar's not that bad. Published by Captain Crunch, whatever that. And so the studies, unless it's in by a scientist in a laboratory, unbiased. So my point was, how animal protein can affect the body. There's some positive things for sure. There are some negative things as well. And so what I would do is focus on whole plant-based for sure. Like you have a huge salad at home, lots of colors. So you try to get in like 10 colors in that salad where it's cabbage, radish, tomato, cucumber, celery, the leafy greens, and then some other things you could throw in there. I try to get a good maybe 6 to 10 colors. And then, if you're, again, it depends on your activity level. So we can, what they call biohacking. You can just, eat meat and salad and avoid all carbohydrates. It's going to work because you're also limiting your calories, but you're not spiking blood sugar, which can leads to, glucagon. I think glucagon, insulin. That's what we don't want to spike. Insulin. Glucagon is opposite, pulls away. Insulin stores fat. And so, limited calories, ketogenic state, you're going to feel good and if you can live there, live there. But for most people, we have to find something that works. And so I go whole plant-based foods only for the majority of the part. And then if you can get some clean meat, some clean dairy, obviously raw dairy is best, but hard to come by. It's expensive. Clean meat, there's places where you can get clean meat, meaning organic, pasture raised, not grain fed, GMO. It's just like, it gets confusing and I'm like, Lord, really? How much of this do we need to worry about? So, and that's the other thing. Don't worry too much about it, micromanaging every little thing, but you do want to look at ingredients. Can I read the ingredients? Do I understand the ingredients? There's sugar in ketchup. There's sugar in jelly. Why can't there just be strawberries? There has to be sugar added to that. And there's sugar in bread. It's like, so whole foods is my primary, plant-based whole foods is my primary. And then if you have an organic chicken breast, you have some avocado, you have some nuts. And they got away from calorie counting. And there's a lot of great doctors, Dr. Jason Fung, Peter Attia, watch him, Daniel Pompa, Alan Goldhammer. I've talked to some of these individuals. And, there's different views on that too. Joel Furman, Dr. Joel Furman, very good. And, what he would say your recommended protein level is way different than, what this person would say. Personally, I found as I got older, I had to really watch carbohydrates because I didn't move as much and I needed a little bit higher protein. A big salad with the chicken breast made me feel really good, but a heavy carb meal made me feel just tired and lethargic. And so you have to be strategic. But that's how we were created, for plant-based. And then you can add in meat and dairy if you feel that's the direction you want to go. Some people like Rich Roll, not a believer. Many of these people aren't. One of the most fittest men in the world, as far as they call it, ultra marathon, 100 miles, as well. Also, as I'm recording this, a friend of mine, Malachi O'Brien, I don't know what number he's on. He's like on number 78 or 80 marathons in a row, like 26 miles a day. Wow. Good for you, man. And he has to keep going. And so, the diet sometimes doesn't look that great. You got a Monster drink and a pizza. I would probably recommend something else, but that's okay. But anyway, so, the body works on that. He's losing weight, Rich Roll, total plant-based. But again, what is your financial level as well? And you can actually eat pretty healthy on a budget. And the key is avoid the sugary snacks. Avoid, you can save a lot by not going to Starbucks or your favorite coffee place or for this treat, you stop for this. You can save a lot of money. And then a big bag of organic potatoes or sweet potatoes, yams, they're not that expensive. Beans, organic beans, let them soak in water. Beans have a lot of incredible properties. Back to my point about calories, though, they got away from calorie counting, which I agree with, because it's kind of, it's a form of dieting. And they say it's not really the amount of calories you have, it's the type of food. And there's some truth into that for sure. But the bottom line is, I hate to tell you this, if you eat too many calories, which is a unit of energy, if you eat too much energy and you're not burning that energy, you will store that energy as fat. That's just the way it is. So you want to be aware to some degree. Like I realized, when I was gaining weight a couple of years ago, I was up to 230 pounds and I'm 6'2". So, and I'm like, what's going on? I realize I'm eating a lot of nuts. If you have a cup of nuts, that's like 800 calories. So like, oh, wow. Okay. I need to let me back down away from that a little bit. Let me do some intermittent fasting. And so we have to be strategic. We have to be wise, do what works for you. The reason, like a carnivore diet, again, I wouldn't recommend it because it is, and people say, well, I feel better. My immune system is, my gut issues, and your gut issues will be fixed because if your gut issues are being caused by certain carbohydrates in your diet or processed food. So by removing those, it will fix your gut issue temporarily, because the meat is a whole different ball game with the meat. So, but then when you stop that and you go back to those foods, it could reignite that gut issue. So I like to go for healing, whole and complete healing. And then you find out what worked, what doesn't, and why. You research a little bit, and you there's not a one size fits all approach. So that's why people say, "Oh, I'm going to do keto. I'm going to do carnivore." And keto is removing carbohydrates. And keto can be okay if you're, eating not keto with bacon and cheese and hamburgers, but keto with, some nuts and avocado, a big salad. And then I throw in, I would throw in a little bit of carbs, maybe a little bit of beans, just keep a little bit there. So as you can see, it gets confusing. You got to find out what works best for you. So if you're in your 30s, I would go plant-based. I would be active. If you're, in your 50s and you're kind of losing muscle, you might want to increase your protein a little bit, with organic chicken breasts, organic, some other types of things, if you can afford it, God. But here's the bottom line. God knows. And people might say, well, my day is numbered. When it's time to go, it's time to go. Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm not quite sold on it, because if you don't take care of your body, you might go a lot sooner than God wanted you to go, because there are consequences. However, there's safety in the center of God's will. And maybe I'll die and find out that, God had a genetic, switch in our DNA that when it's time to go, it's time to go. But we also know that a lot of people get healed from cancer by changing their diet. And the reason is, often cancer is a cell that keeps dividing that's unhealthy, and it needs fuel. It needs sugar. So it primarily feeds off glucose. And so it's no surprise why we have a sugar epidemic, cancer epidemic, processed foods, and anything that can trigger something in the cell to react in an unhealthy way will create cancer. And, that's a whole nother podcast for sure. I'm not an expert in that area, but I do know that healthy God-given food, people even talk about juicing. I would be careful because there's a lot of sugar in juice, especially in fruit juice. You're going to get a lot of sugar. And so if you're doing juicing, I'd maybe have like a half apple and some greens, some heavy dark greens, and maybe a little bit of peanuts. What happens, or peanuts, but nuts. What happens is the fat in the nuts will help slow down the absorption rate of the sugar in the bloodstream, thus not elevating your glucose level too high. So like I said, this can get real technical. But if I were you, I would get back to whole plant-based foods. You'd be amazed. I think you can find on YouTube. Put in the pantry pastor strikes again. The pantry pastor strikes again. And I did I cleaned out some pantries, and the processed food, I would say 90% of the stuff in our refrigerators and in our pantries, we shouldn't be eating. Because again, is it life-giving? Is this sauerkraut, this living food, life-giving? This salsa, homemade salsa with tomatoes, life-giving? Yeah, it is. Is the vegetables life-giving? These beans life-giving? Even maybe say some of the meat, dairy, say raw goat milk or raw goat cheese. Again, it's expensive. I can't find, I don't have it as much as I'd like. These are life-giving foods. So I'm going to take these in. I'm going to get rid of the dead foods. The ketchup with 1 teaspoon of sugar. That's right, 1 teaspoon of sugar in a serving of ketchup. You can imagine that. And this bread, this Wonder Bread that is enriched. Enriched just means, hey, we took everything good out, so now we have to chemically and scientifically add some things back in there. That's why it's enriched. So anyway, so, white bread, tons of sugar in the bread. And then we got luncheon meat that has, sodium nitrates that are definitely what they call a carcinogen, a cancer-causing carcinogen. So avoid the lunch meats. Again, is it dead food? Now, some meat is dead food, right? Of course. And Dr. Goldhammer talks about not eating sugar, salt, oil, and dead meat, putrefying dead meat, flesh. But biblically speaking, there is an allotment for that. Jesus, I'm sure, ate lamb on the Passover. He ate fish. There's meat in there. I believe they had goat milk. They would eat lamb as well. Did I already say that? Might have already said that. So, you see, but then you also see Ezekiel take spelt and millet and these different things and make bread. You'd see them eating figs, pomegranates, figs, nuts for sure, pistachio. And so the Bible is filled with people eating good God-given food. And sometimes that does consist of meat and dairy if it's healthy and in moderation. So here's the thing, if you're at a good ideal weight, and even I'm not right now, I'm 215 pounds. My ideal weight's probably 175, 180 ideal. If we're carrying around a lot of extra weight, I think it's for every extra pound, it's like, I don't know what it is. I don't want to tell you the wrong information. It's in one of my books, but it's like an extra mile of blood vessels, or an extra 10 pounds is extra mile blood. I don't remember what it is, but so my point is, the more weight you put on, the more you tax your heart, the more the heart of the body has to work to pump that blood. So that's why you see older people that are living longer are obviously very slender. I mean, hello. And then Walter Longo at USC, he's head of research and development for longevity. He has the fasting mimicking diet. Lots of good information there too. That's not a bad approach, because you kind of eat normal, and then you calorie restrict, and then eat normal, and then you've got other doctors, biologists, who say, no, it's not about the food you eat, it's when you eat. 1 meal a day, they call it OMAD, 1 meal a day, OMAD. And if you want to try these things, that's fine, but you got to figure out what's going to work for you. Make sure I'm not eating too much, make sure I'm staying active, make sure I'm eating God-given food, and make sure I'm falling forward. So it says, when I blow it, man, I just had, why did I eat? I mean, for example, Christmas dinner, a perfect example. I did pretty good. I was proud of myself. 1 plate. Okay. You're sitting there, and then go for another plate. Why did I do that? And then now they pull out the pumpkin pie. Why did I do that? So the next day, I'm not going to go, oh, let me just keep falling. No, I'd say, okay, enough of these shenanigans. Let me get back on track. So the key is to fall forward, get back on track. Don't make excuses. But I'm also, for me, I don't want to give myself cheat days, because if I take a cheat day, I'll take a cheat week, and I'll take a cheat week. I'll take a cheat month. So I don't need to give myself permission to eat junk food on a certain day. I like living in that area of self-discipline, and keeping, bodily appetites in control as much as you can. But at the end of the day, you have to focus on God-given food. Again, you can download my books at westsidechristianfellowship.org, westsidechristianfellowship.org. I talk more about supplementation, from vitamin C, vitamin D, what type of supplementation if you're trying to break an addiction. So my book, Help I'm Addicted, you can find a good regiment there of, what type of supplements for breaking addiction. And supplements are pretty good. You don't want to get too carried away on those. I've got my top 8 in there or something. But anyway, so God-given food, staying active, and some type of caloric control. I mean, you don't have to control it too much, but I know me, I'm going to go eat a cup of nuts every day at night, probably. And so I got to kind of control that a little bit. And then active exercise, the right body image, healthy self-image, staying in God's word, obeying God's word, staying filled with the Spirit, and wanting to take care of this wonderful gift he gave us. So I hope that helps. I can't give you, do this, do the carnivore diet. I mean, I know Justin Peters has had good results on the carnivore diet. His daughter had amazing results on it. I don't know if they stayed on it, but just eating meat all the time, what it does to your gut bacteria, your microbiome, the fiber, lack of fiber content, to maybe to try it if you want, but to stay there and to live that way, that's where it gets challenging. So you might want to mix up a keto. I have no problem with somebody removing carbohydrates for a season. I mean, the big ones, yams, sweet potatoes, rice, beans, pasta, and then of course, cookies, chips, crackers, get rid of all those things and just, focus on God-given veggies and avocado and nuts. Also, something you have to be aware of is they call these refined vegetable oils, safflower oil, canola oil. They are in pretty much a lot of our food, especially if you eat out. I mean, if you eat out a lot, you might want to make a decision to eat out a lot less and look at the labels. Even I just bought organic chips and it had safflower oil. And okay, a refined oil is when it's been processed. Often it's been heated, it's been treated. And sometimes that process makes it smell really bad. So then they use solvents to take away the smell. So often the best thing is just some avocado oil, even cold pressed. Cold pressed is meaning it's just pressed the right way without heating it. Cold pressed olive oil, coconut oil. As long as those things are unrefined, like how God made it. Okay, folks. So I think in the years to come, what's 2000, we're going to 2023, you're going to see, obviously we know the sugar connection, but a big connection with refined vegetable oils. And a lot of times with the offset of omega-3, omega-6, and you've got those so high, and we're not supposed to have these, say, example for omega-3 or omega-6 out of order. And it's really causing a lot of inflammation in the body. I'm wondering if that has a lot to do with what we're seeing in heart disease and cholesterol clotting the arteries. Something about that too, just a side note. Cholesterol necessarily isn't the bad thing. So what happens in your artery, you have cells, starts with a P, it's a long word. You have these cells that coat the artery. It's like they're slippery. And so the fat just kind of, just goes off. And then if there's an injury, there's a tear, there's something, maybe toxic food, maybe I don't know exactly what would cause it, but there's an injury. So that's where the LDL lipids, high density lipoproteins, and you hear of LDL and HDL, high density, low density. One of those takes away the cholesterol. One of those brings the cholesterol to the injured site. And once it creates that covering, to inflammation starts to take place, and it fixes that, it should fix itself and slide away, and there shouldn't be a plaque buildup. But something is causing the plaque buildup to continue building up and continue building up and continue building up. So I don't think it's necessarily the cholesterol in and of itself. There's other things at play, and they could find at some point that refined vegetable oils are having, because it's fat in there as well, especially partially hydrogenated oils, avoid at all costs. And so anyway, that's what's going on in the arteries. There's a lot to a lot of this. So ironically, eating God-given whole foods helps to really clean this out and smooth this out, and helps to remove some of the plaque buildup, not to mention fasting. Fasting is incredible for that. So anyway, hope that helps. What I would do is just set out on a plan. Okay, Lord, God-given food, active, in moderation, not eating whenever I want, have a limited time like intermittent fasting, and just be content and happy and watch what God does, especially pray for direction. Maybe he might have some of you feel really good about a ketogenic diet for a season. Maybe he's going to have some of you just switch completely to whole foods and maybe some juicing now and then, some healthy protein shakes. I use protein shakes as well, mainly plant-based protein shakes, but then there's collagen from grass-fed, raw, I don't know if it'd be raw, but grass-fed cows, collagen from that. And, you can find these things in a good health food store. But pray, ask God for direction. He might have what he's having me do, might not be what he's having you do. And what you're doing might not be what your wife needs to do. But it all needs to focus on not evolution, creation. How was the body designed? Am I eating life-giving food? Am I staying active? And am I keeping a proper self-image? Am I avoiding gluttony? Am I avoiding all these destructive types of foods that can really, really take me down? So anyway, hope that helps. Trying to keep it under a half hour, and it looks like I barely got it there. We'll talk to you next time.